Oh, hello, world. Welcome to Comic Book News. It's me, your old pal, Dan Shaheen. It's been a while since we've been here in the studio. And frankly, it's going to be a while before you see me back here. I'm about to embark on a 2-week vacation with my family. Going to go out to parts unknown and see things I haven't seen before and do things I haven't done, which I recommend you all do more often. However, today we're here to do something that we've done before and talk to someone we've seen before and talked to before. But oh my goodness, he's got so many things that have happened to him since the last time we talked. I can't wait to bring in Gene Yang. I was Yang Gang before it was cool. I was Yang Gang before Andrew Yang or any of that stuff. And I'm glad Andrew Yang fizzled out so that the Yang could rise to prominence, the one true Yang. So I'm going to bring him in here and talk to him. But wait, we can't do it here. We got to talk to him. Gene, if we're going to talk to Gene about comics, we got to go somewhere fun.
The Bat Pulse.
All right, now let's bring him in. You know him, you love him. Gene Yang, welcome back.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me again. Man, your backgrounds are probably the most impressive, right? On social media.
Oh, why, thank you, Gene.
That was awesome, man.
I you don't know how hard I work. If you think this is something, check out our show Serious Star Trek. If you like Star Trek, I do with my friend Larry, and man, I go nuts with Blender and special effects.
Wow.
I go to town on this thing. But Gene, we're not here to talk about us. You want to talk about production values? I just watched episode 1 of American Born Chinese on the Disney Plus streaming network. And Gene, I was a Gene Yang fan. I was an American Born Chinese fan, but this thing blew me away. Like at first I was watching it and I'm going like, this is not really like the book. This is not.
Yeah.
But by the end, I'm like, it is, but it isn't, but it is, but it's great. I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching it, man.
Oh man, how was your experience? And I'll give you the best compliment of all is that I'm gonna watch the next episode.
That's awesome.
Because that doesn't always happen in this day and age.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
thank you. Thank you so much.
When you left here last, we talked about Superman versus the Klan, and you hinted at something was coming for American Born Chinese. So tell us what took you from there.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a media agent ever since the book came out in 2006, so it's been a long time. But very early on, there wasn't a ton of interest in adapting it for the screen, and part of that, this is like over 15 years ago, so it was a different world. Part of that was there was some concern about whether or not you could have a mostly Asian or Asian American cast carry a show for an American audience. Like that, now we think differently, right? Now post Black Panther, post Crazy Rich Asians, post Shang-Chi.
But it's barely, that's a couple years,
It is a couple years. It's like the last 5 years, yeah.
It's not that, and yes, and to move beyond, what we've seen of Asian representation on the screen in America into something just way richer, way more interesting. And
yeah, absolutely. I think so too. I mean, I just think that even from a fan's perspective, you do want a diversity of stories, right? You don't want to see or hear the same story over and over and over again. You want to have a variety of different kinds of stories that you can enjoy. So about 3-4 years ago, this project got going. I signed with a producer named Melvin Marr, who was kind of on a hot streak. He had done Fresh Off the Boat, which had gone, I think, 6 or 7 seasons, which is pretty good for a sitcom. And then he did the 2 Jumanji movies with The Rock and Kevin Hart. And those two movies especially were not supposed to be giant hits. That first one, I don't know if you remember, but there wasn't a lot of buzz about it. And then when it came out, it kind of surprised everybody with how good it was and how popular it became. Uh, and then he signed me. He hooked me up with this guy named Kelvin Yu, who is an incredible writer. He writes for Bob's Burgers, so he's really good at like that humor and also families. And he's an actor. He plays Aziz Ansari's best friend on Master of None.
Okay. I will
Yeah.
say I didn't know what to expect, right? When you say a Disney series, like there's a lot of things that it could have been like. And there's a
That's
lot
right.
of levels of quality and how it could have been shot and the acting and the writing. And I will say this, it was at the highest level for all of those things.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, some of that, all of it really,
But you know what I'm saying? They put out some hunks of crap over there. Just because it's Disney does not mean that it's not going to be a steaming pile of junk. Like there was the opportunity for them to give you a big pile of money and put out a big pile of junk. But they really, really did it, man. They went, this is a quality production through and through.
Yeah, I mean, it's because of the team that they put together. So after Kelvin signed on, we had this talk about how to adapt this, and I've been told before that the book is unadaptable because
I didn't think it was,
yeah, not just because of the the predominantly Asian cast that it would require, but also because of the structure of the book. And ultimately, I think Kelvin's approach was he wanted to boil the story down to its spine, which is really about this kid who's not very comfortable with himself or his background. He becomes friends with this foreign exchange student who he finds really embarrassing at first. And this foreign exchange student is really like this link to this bigger world. And then on top of that, there are these three different worlds that kind of come crashing together. There's the mundane world that's kind of set in a high school. There is a fantastical world of the Chinese gods. And then there's the sitcom world.
Yeah.
So he kind of preserved all of those things. But he built a lot of really fun and new things on top of that, like the parent relationship, right?
Well, that's what I wanted to say. It's that family dynamic, and I'm a child of an immigrant, and a child, first generation and second generation from my mom's side, and the dynamic, the American yet still like with roots to home, and that home dynamic just comes through in such a way that it felt like I'm not Chinese, but I felt like.
Yeah. Like the details are different, but we're hoping that the emotions are the same for anybody who grew up speaking a different language at home, or like your home smells different from what the school smells like. And anybody
we're not water ski people.
Yeah.
That's something that my mom might have said to like that's not like something that our family, like we're not that kind of. It just that sets your kind of worldview and your mindset into. I don't think a lot of people who maybe are like, have just been American, whatever, their entire family's life quite understand that dynamic.
Yeah, that's right.
But I found it put me back to that age with feelings I didn't really I barely remembered having. So like, good work.
Well, thank you.
Good work.
Thank you. I mean, it was an incredible team. Like the guy who directed both the first and the last episodes of the series is Dustin Cretton, who did Shang-Chi. And I think he was the perfect person to do it because he did, like, Shang-Chi is action, but he also did this movie called Just Mercy, which is it's like a biopic about a lawyer who works in the justice space. And it's incredible. It's like a much quieter movie that's focused on human relationships. Yeah. And he kind of took both sides of that to do that pilot.
Well, and this explains to me why out of nowhere we get one of the best kick-ass action fight, mystical kung fu fight scenes ever in the end of the spoiler alert, folks. But like those can be done well, they can be done not so well. And it was like, oh my gosh, the monkey running on the lockers and stuff, like every little touch was just like, oh man, this is not just like okay, it's over the top good. Like really,
they did a great job. Yeah, I mean, he brought his whole team over. He brought the Shang-Chi costume designer over, and he brought the Shang-Chi stunt coordinator over. The whole team, the whole stunt team over. So we were just incredibly lucky that he said yes to this project.
Well, and then so you brought in elements that we've also seen you bring in more recently since the last time we saw you into DC Comics. And I promise you, we're pretty much almost done talking about Hollywood Gene Yang, big Hollywood big shot Gene Yang, because like me and you, we can talk comics, we can talk all the way back, right? So, but for a second, let's finish off talking about like Hollywood stuff for a second. This thing, did you really foresee it like coming? Because so many people get deals. So many.
No way. Like, could I predicted it? No way.
Like, no even way. Close, right? And
yeah.
And it's morphed. It is undeniably not an adaptation of the graphic novel. It's not a straight adaptation.
It's not. Adaptation. Yeah, it's an adjacent. It's like an adjacent adaptation, not a direct adaptation for sure.
But it's brought in some of the elements that you also brought into DC Comics. This is where I started this crazy train of thought. You brought in the Monkey King and the monkey. Tell us about the Monkey King. Tell us about why. Tell us about that story in general, where that comes from and how it came.
Sure. Do you hear my kids?
Yeah,
love that. I could tell them to be quiet.
Nah, don't do that.
All right. Yeah, they're running around outside. So my wife and I, we have 4 kids. One of them is away. One of them is a college student, but the other 3 are at home being loud. Okay, so the Monkey King. The Monkey King is, speaking of kids, the Monkey King I first heard of when I was a kid. My mom used to tell me his stories at bedtime. And that's true of almost every kid of Chinese descent. You know, the Monkey King is like one of the pivotal figures in Chinese mythology. His story was first written down 500 years ago in this novel called Journey to the West, which is considered one of the 4 pillars of Chinese literature. But people say that his story probably predated that novel as an oral tradition. And he's just a really big deal in Asia. Like,
but he's fun.
Yeah, he's so fun. He's a trickster character. But ultimately, like, Journey to the West is about how this character who starts off kind of like morally not all there becomes enlightened. Like, the whole thing is about his journey towards spiritual enlightenment. And he's the basis of a bunch of stuff that we probably all know and love. Like, Dragon Ball Z is kind of a version of the Monkey King story,
right? Yeah.
And there's a 1970s anime series called Starzinger that was also like a science fiction version of him. He's a side character in Sonic the Hedgehog. He shows up in a couple of Sonic stories. He is the basis of one of the Pokemon. You know, like, he's all over.
And a great character that's kind of fun and goofy and mischievous, but then at the same time, there's hardcore magical kung fu action in the Monkey King stories. And
that's right.
All his magical powers and weapons and abilities and stuff. And now we got a taste of that. You brought that to DC Comics. First, tell us, because that came first as far as what the public saw.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it came first in terms of project as well. So American Born Chinese, I had signed, but this is something that I didn't really realize until I started working more closely with Hollywood. One of the big differences between comics and Hollywood is when you sign a contract in comics, there's like a 95% chance that comic is going to end up on a shelf. You know, as long as you do the work, it'll show up.
Yes.
Hollywood is not like that. You sign a contract, it is still like winning the lottery to get something up on the screen. You know, so I had signed for American Born Chinese, but at that point, I wouldn't have bet on it showing up on a screen. And then DC, Jessica Chen specifically, she's my editor at DC Comics. She approached me with this idea of bringing those Chinese mythological characters into the DC universe. So the 2 of us got in touch with Bernard Chang, because everybody is a huge fan of Bernard Chang, including Jessica and me. And then the 3 of us started working on the Monkey Prince together. So they're related projects, right? They're both about the Monkey King, both American Born Chinese, the show, and Monkey Prince. I was working on both of them at the same time, and it was a little bit weird to be doing that, but it was also fun.
So it's Monkey Prince in the DC universe, so they can have a copyright and they can.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's Monkey Prince. Yeah, that's right. Because one of the main characters in American Born Chinese is the son of the Monkey King.
Right.
And the Monkey Prince is also the son of the Monkey King. So that was a little weird. And there are also these other there are these other coincidences that happened. like we were working on the comic, and we decided in the original Journey to the West, there's a sand demon. That's like in English translations, he's called Sandy, and in the book, we decided to make our equivalent of the Sandy character female, so she's Sandra, and then they made the same choice on the American-born Chinese side without any input from me. They just made that same choice.
Well, so this is a thread though that's carrying over from your childhood and weaving its way into your work. I think that's a perfect. DC had to say they're like, we're not going to get in a Thor situation where anybody can put out like a Thor. You know what I mean? That name Thor is domain at this point, so it's like they're gonna have their hooks into that one. But how does that relate though to Monkey? There is no relationship officially between the two.
Yeah, there's no official relationship.
There's they both draw from the same source. They both have like
that's it. But because they draw from the same source, there is a lot of overlap, you know. And one of the things that we talked about with Monkey Prince very early on is we wanted this to be kind of an expression of the Monkey King mythology that was very DC specific. You know, so we tried to bring in as many DC elements as we could. As sort of a way of distinguishing itself from other versions.
Gotcha. Kind of Don Blake it up a little bit on the.
Yeah, that's right. Don Blake it up a little bit. Yeah, so we tie him in. We made his parents, his adoptive parents, like henchmen that would hire themselves out to different DC universe villains. We thought that would be a way for him to have to move from city to city, so that you could kind of see like a lot of the DC universe through this one character. And then even the design of his costume, like Bernard and I talked pretty early on about making it look very DC specific. And one of the things that we talked about was how many of the characters in the DC universe have like a letter on their chest, right? Like Superman has one, Aquaman has one, Wonder Woman has one. And often that letter isn't just the letter, it's also something else. So for Superman, it's also a Kryptonian symbol. For Aquaman, it's like an Atlantean like glyph, right? So we did the same thing with Monkey King. So Monkey Prince. He has this M on his chest that is an M, but it's also like a symbol of the Monkey King's birthplace, which is like a mountain. It's a mystical mountain.
Well, plus DC's rich history of monkey comics.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. So we got 12 issues, which was amazing. But Bernard and I have talked about doing more. Bernard, Jessica, and I have talked about doing more, and that would be something that we would want to do. We would want to bring some of those monkeys in and those apes in for team ups.
Honestly, if DC doesn't want to do it, Gene, I think the world would love to just see straight monkey comics, just straight monkey adaptation of the myths.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot though. There are a lot that exist. A lot of manga artists and
really
Chinese comic book artists have done it. Yeah, to the point where it's almost its own genre. There's just so many Monkey King manga in Chinese comics out there.
Well, it's got legs in the West still, Gene. We're not tired of it yet. But man, there's been this amazing wave that you caught two waves, Gene. You caught a wave of let's say greater Asian American representation in broader media, but then you also were surfing the wave of like all ages kind of YA comics way back before it was the thing to be doing. Like right now, if you were starting your career as a cartoonist, maybe you were 18 years old or something like that, getting out fresh out of high school, you've got paths in front of you, and kind of the richer path and almost the better, the more likely path is to go like the scholastic kind of all ages, broader audience path than to go down this, I'm going to be a 9th generation Neil Adams clone.
Sure. I mean, I think comics has diversified in every sense of that word, right? Like back in the day, it really seemed like the only comics path out there was the Marvel/DC path. Maybe a little bit Archie, right? Maybe a little bit Archie, but that was it, at least in America. And now it's just like amazing. If you want to do older comics for an older audience, you could go down Image. that image path. There are a bunch of really like brand new publishers that I think are doing some really interesting things, like Ahoy. I don't know if you've read any of Ahoy comics, but they're doing some really interesting stuff. And then on the younger route, there is the Scholastic, First Second, Abrams route. And you're totally right. Like that was not a thing when I started doing comics in the 1990s. That really became a thing as I kind of came into my own as a cartoonist. And I think we have like lots of folks to thank for that. Like number one is Art Spiegelman, who kind of created a space in people's heads for literary comics. And then Craig Thompson with Blankets, I think.
Yeah,
he was the one that kind of we talked about it before in the pre-interview.
In the green room.
Yeah, in the green room.
Well, let's talk about him right now too, because you brought up a great point. Because I often forget about that moment in time when Blankets came out.
Yeah, Blankets hit like a bomb. It was like so impressive and so ahead of its time.
And what was really impressive to me was how much uptake it got and how many people even read it and like it was a mega hit in the sense of copies sold to a very broad audience.
That's right.
And like in the comic shop, I was able to move a lot of them, but I know they moved a lot of them in bookstores and all over the place, and really opened up people's mind to what kind of story and who you could target.
That's right. And there are people who just didn't read any comics at all that would read Blankets, and it would make them fans of not a genre but a medium. It made them fans of a medium, which I think was huge. It was huge in establishing the space that we eventually saw, right, with YA and middle grade graphic novels.
I say there's a straight line from Scott McCloud to through Craig Thompson to Gene Yang.
I love Scott McCloud too. Yeah, Scott McCloud, Understanding Comics came out, I think I was either a senior in high school or a freshman in college. I was right, at the end of my teenage years.
I think we're right about the same age, I think.
Yeah. Those ideas just hooked their way into my brain, right? Like reading that was mind-blowing to me. I don't know if I'd be doing comics now if I hadn't read Understanding Comics at the time.
As a mega fan of Scott McCloud, we talked about Scott McCloud in our last interview.
Yeah.
And I sent those comments to Scott to go, look, hey, Gene's talking about you. Come on back on the show. And Scott, to his credit, answered back. He's just like, Dan, I do want to come back, but I've got like project after project after project.
Yeah.
He's an amazing guy. But when I read your work, just knowing Scott McCloud and loving his work as much as I do, from Zot to Understanding Comics and everything else, there's a through line. Like your style, to me, if I was to point a big influence, that would be the first one that would come to mind.
Yeah, thank you. I take that as a huge compliment, because I am very McCloudian in the way I think about comics, just because that Understanding Comics was so foundational to me. How I think about everything comics related is kind of filtered through that book.
I still don't feel like it's been equaled as a text in as far as broaching some of the concepts that he broached and laying them out in the way that he did.
That's right.
Closure, his concept of closure, and the whole pyramid of photorealism to abstraction, and like
that pyramid was amazing.
Yeah, right. All that
mind
stuff.
Blowing. Yeah.
The examples he chose, like the perfect gradation of those concepts, like spelled out in characters that we know. So that's the kind of thing. It's like he's pure, like storytelling power, like concentrated, like ideas flowing through. And that's when I read your book. It's your books, Dragon Hoops. Again, it's one of those books that I picked up going like, I don't expect to be engaged that much by I hope to make it through this book, maybe. And then I'm reading it and I am sucked in because of the storytelling. And it's in a way that, like, I'm a technical guy in comics, so I see the tricks you're doing and I go, that's McCloud. That's straight out of McCloud, page 27 or whatever. But I go like, it's just a proof that all those concepts are so powerful when put to use in service of a great story.
Yeah. I mean, McCloud figured out something amazing. He's just Yeah, he's a very singular mind, right? There's not a lot of people like him out there.
Yeah,
And
he's the guy.
yeah, it's kind of amazing that he devoted himself to comics too. That dude, he could have made it in a bunch of different industries. And I think we're just very lucky that he chose comics.
I absolutely. I mean, if the only thing he gave the world was understanding comics, that would be one thing. But
Yeah.
like, he's continued to do some amazing stuff, and like, you ever read his Google Chrome comic that he
I
did
did.
for
Yeah, that
Google?
was great. That was great.
Like under explaining deeply technical concepts
Uh-huh.
like that in a kind of an effortless way is pretty magical.
He's just impressive. Yeah, and I think he's impressive not just as a cartoonist, but as a teacher, and as an example of how to use
Yeah,
comics to teach.
yeah. What is that pedagogy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Whatever. He's good at it for sure.
yeah. He's
And
great.
I just, yeah, I wish we. Here's what I wish. We talked about Craig Thompson, who sat in a room after Blankets. He sat in a room for years and worked on Habibi.
Hmm.
And he put it out, and people went, pretty good. What's next? Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? And he reacted to that now in his new work, Ginseng Roots. He's like, I want to put it out and feel that, letters call. I want to get letters as I'm working on this thing, and like the work reacts. And how do you feel about that? Like, you've worked in monthly comics, and did you write Action or you wrote Superman?
I did Superman. I did Superman for 10 issues. Yeah,
So
and
it's
then I did.
a way
Yeah,
different process, right? So tell me, do you like one better than the other?
I think they're very different. They're very different. They're both comics, but they're very different. The biggest difference might be the pace at which you're telling the story. So with the graphic novel, I feel like I can go over that story again and again and again over a period of months or years. Whereas with superhero comics, I mean, you're under a gun, you're under deadline, and it's like a different way of thinking. I do think that the graphic novel way of doing things comes more naturally to me, but I feel like I learn a lot by doing superhero comics.
What I think is that the graphic novel are great. If but the monthly grind of like going through the system is what like churns out some of the technical skills of some
Yeah,
people,
that's right.
force them to hit a deadline, force them
Hmm.
also to get better and better. They're like,
Yep.
I got this story needs to go out this month. Well, I'll get a better one next time, and you can see that process in writers and artists.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
it?
I've heard the story, and it might be apocryphal, but supposedly there's some sculpture teacher at a college, and he experimented one semester where he divided his class in two, and he had half of his class. He told them they would be graded on the very best piece. Have you heard of this?
I've heard this story.
Yeah. Yeah, they'd be graded on the very best piece that they produced. So everyone in that half of the class would just labor over one piece, spent the whole semester laboring over one piece. And then the other half of the class, he said, you're going to be graded on the poundage, on the sheer quantity of stuff that you produce. And invariably, the second that second group produced the best work. So it really is like iteration, right? That allows you to get better. So
I
I
don't
think that's
think
what
there's
superhero comics lets you do. It lets you iterate really quickly.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way around that, really. Yeah, that
Yep.
it's the if we'll go to a, kung fu movie metaphor, it's like when they're pounding the sand, and then they're pounding
Uh-huh.
the pebbles, and then by the end they're smashing through boulders and stuff, right? That's the
Yep.
But okay, that's been the big story in the comics world lately. I don't know, you don't keep up too much on the comics news, but like comics broke me. Have you heard about hashtag comics broke me, Gene?
I saw some of it. I saw a little bit of it. Yes,
Okay.
but I don't know the details. I think I just saw some of it flash across some social media, and that was about
Yeah,
it.
it's basically in a nutshell. I mean, the idea is that it's a comics is an industry full of people who want to get in, and there's only so many slots, and so they chew people up. People get taken advantage of, and often do, you know, take deals that are not good for themselves or their
Yeah,
health or anything, just because of their love of the thing.
yeah,
Have you
yeah.
seen that?
I do think that I mean, my approach is like in the very beginning, I was not expecting to be able to make a full time living at comics. Uh, I was a high school teacher, and I thought that I would use my winter breaks and my summers working on comics. And I thought of it kind of as an avocation, right? This isn't going to be how I feed myself, but it's going to be an important part of my life. And I was going to work on it. Like I thought some people like work on their golf game with their off time. I'm going to work on becoming a better cartoonist. And then what happened since then in a lot of ways was a surprise. I was not expecting to ever be able to make a full-time living at comics. I have seen how comics is not awesome to creators for sure, how the industry kind of chews people up sometimes. And there definitely are contracts that are just not good for us. I was lucky that, you know, after American Born Chinese came out in 2006, Kazu Kibuishi, he's, you know, amazing cartoonist. He's a friend of mine. He introduced me to his agent, Judy Hansen, and Judy's been with me ever since. Judy is just very, very good at sniffing that kind of stuff out. So I've been a beneficiary of being kind of under her protective shield, you know.
How does that work out, Gene? How do you get an agent in comic? And like,
yeah, it's becoming more and more common, especially in the graphic novel side of things.
Yeah, the literary world.
Yeah,
has a
that's
history
right.
of literary agents and such, right?
And the hope is that becomes a thing on the other side as well. I think it is more and more. But Judy was one of the first to do it. So, you know, because she was one of the first, I think she ended up representing a lot of people. She represents Raina Telgemeier. She represents Will Eisner's estate, Scott McCloud, Kazu Kibuishi, Jerry Kraft, a bunch of us.
She's the classy comics agent. We like that.
Yeah.
Now, but do you find, I don't know if you know any other agents or have met them, are they like comics heads? Are they real like fans of the stuff?
Yeah, I don't know a ton of agents besides Judy. I know they're out there. But Judy's the only one I know really well. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, because she's mine, so we talk about stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and
sure.
she really loves comics. She's been in comics for a very long time. You know, and I think she believed in comics in a way that nobody else did very early on, and that's why she started agenting us when nobody else wanted to.
Well, and so now we're in an era where, like, if it wasn't a comic, there's less of a chance it's going to get made now. The situation in Hollywood is like, it's bizarre world from when we were kids, right? And we were like, oh my God, I hope they can make an X-Men movie someday, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh my gosh, can't we get one good movie?
Yeah, and they were always so cheesy. Remember, like in the 70s and 80s, whenever they tried, they were almost always so cheesy.
So remember when Thor met the Incredible Hulk?
I vaguely remember that was the Thor with the hairy like vest or something,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So
exactly.
yeah, we had to deal with that. Plus, like, you couldn't even, there was no cred to being like, oh, I know the comics and I'm I really read all this stuff and I know, like, there was no cultural.
It was the opposite of cred. It was the opposite. It would get you a wedgie if you said that. You know, like nobody, you would never wear like a Spider-Man t-shirt to school. That'd be a good way of getting something thrown at you. And so now it's weird. Now like everybody wears that stuff. People wear Rocket Raccoon t-shirts.
This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, Gene. We go into Target and you see a Ferris aircraft shirt.
Yeah.
What?
That's right.
Like you'll see the obscureness.
Yeah. Or like Star Labs. You see like cool kids wearing the Star Labs. Like hoodies and stuff. So weird.
But so yeah, what a world that we flipped into. I made a prediction in college. I was like, I thought that when I bought my comic book store was right after like Spider-Man was announced, the Sam Raimi Spider, and I said, you know what? I just have the feeling that superheroes they could eat the world of Hollywood the way they ate the world of comics. Like, there's something so compelling and simplistic, I'm going to say, and maybe even fascist in this narrative that is superhero, that is like super appealing.
Yeah.
In a kind of like addictive, sick way, because it's like vigilante justice that is espoused even in Superman. He's above the law, right?
Yeah,
he's just, but because he's from a better stock, he is able to make these. You hear where I'm going with this?
I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think there's a symbolic quality just superheroes. They wear the symbols on their chest, you know. So what you're watching is kind of like a bunch of symbols that are fighting.
And
And I think our world is more quickly becoming reduced to symbols. Like we're all used to using icons and everything,
yes,
right? We even communicate in icons now. So to have these movies that are essentially icons battling it out makes sense to me why it's so popular.
I see it. It's just very interesting the way, and I really didn't seriously think it would happen. I just sort of mused about it, and I thought, well, that's why I'm going to buy a comic book store, because when that happens,
Huh?
like comics will be elevated, and they sort of were, right?
Yeah,
Comics,
they sort of were. They sort of were. Yeah, sure.
but not in the way I thought. Like the superhero comics that are the basis of most of the biggest mega hits of the
Uh-huh.
last decade. Can you imagine? Like we're even saying that.
I
That
know,
it's
I know.
like 10 solid years of Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. I know
Guardians
nobody
of the
predicted that
Galaxy.
one.
That's so crazy, right?
So we're in
Yeah.
this world. So we're in this world now. What's the? But you know, many people said it was not healthy for the comics world. And it seems like people are starting to say the same thing about the Hollywood world and the
Mm-hmm,
movie
mm-hmm,
world. What I like about what you're doing there with American Born Chinese is it's different than
mm-hmm,
everything. That
mm-hmm.
series is not a superhero comic, but it had fall down the sitcom elements, Gene, of the series. What's the name of the series? The fic with the janitor.
With the janitor.
Yeah,
What
with
do
the
you mean?
Asian janitor with the fan, who the fan falls on.
Oh, yeah. It's Beyond Repair.
Beyond
Beyond
repair. Yeah,
Repair.
beyond
Yeah,
repair.
yeah,
Beyond
yeah.
repair. I have it in my notes here
Yeah,
because I go like that was how Chin Ki
that's right.
sort of got into this series.
Yeah, that was the translation of the most difficult part of the graphic novel. They translated it
Absolutely. Because it
into
could have been
Beyond
done in
Repair.
an insensitive. I mean, it was genius
Yeah.
when I saw. How'd that come about? Where did
I mean
that?
that all belongs all the credit to all of that goes to Kelvin Yu, the showrunner, and his writers team. You know, his writers room is just he filled it with like these amazingly talented, very experienced Hollywood writers, and they came up with a lot of these really ingenious solutions to the problems that came with that adaptation.
Amazing, because as kooky as that stuff is, when you watch it on in this day and age, it's like that is not far at all from the way representation was. Like
No, no, no.
growing
I
up,
mean,
like my whole
yeah,
life growing up, that was Asian representation right into like
that's right.
John Hughes movies, right?
Yep,
And
that's right. Like Long Duck Dong, but even fairly
Short Round.
recently, yeah, Short Round. Like there's a Short Round. I think is a complicated character in a lot of different ways. But like recently, there's a sitcom called Two Broke Girls that
Yeah.
actually has like this Asian stereotype as one of the main characters.
Okay.
So that show went off the air, I think, in 2017. So it's a very recent thing, you know.
I mean, you saw it on Mad TV up until, I mean, very like
Yeah.
virulently like yellow face,
That's right.
if I can
Yep.
use that
Yep.
term, like really not. Um, and then when I don't know, I grew up. I had a lot of Asian. I have Japanese best friend growing up, and I had Vietnamese roommates, and just living in the Bay Area, you
Yeah.
get to know that like Asian doesn't mean Chinese,
Yeah.
first of
Yeah.
all, and that there's such a variety. It's just I love that now that it's been broken up. You could be a jerk. You could be an Asian character that's an asshole,
That's right.
that's
Yeah.
kind of dumb, or that is really,
Yeah.
or whatever. It doesn't matter anymore. That's so I long for that day for my own people, Gene, when I can have a
Mhm.
Palestinian character who's not, a
Yeah.
terrorist
Yeah. Yeah.
or what, a bodega owner.
Yeah.
That's about the
Yeah.
best I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
hope for, right? Is
Yeah.
that I'm a
Yeah.
friendly bodega owner. Um, so I just like the things that you're doing for American born Chinese and that we're seeing for the Asian community and stuff. And you're hitting those issues head on with American born Chinese, this series. That's what's so amazing about it.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the hope. And I think it was a passion project for almost everybody who was working on that series, right? Like both in front of and behind the camera, there are a whole bunch of Asian Americans, and they just put so much of themselves into that series. Like
It
even
really
in the little details, everything from the costumes to the set design to the way it was written. It's just passion all the way through.
great actors
Uh-huh.
from the main characters to the supporting character. Who's that dude who's the teacher who I've just seen in a
Oh yeah,
million
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Oh
Sonic
man, I don't remember
commercials and
his
stuff?
name.
You know
Yeah,
who
yeah.
I'm talking
He's
about,
so
right?
good. He's so good. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like
Yeah.
those are the kind of
Yeah.
character touches around the edges and stuff that really give it a mark of
Yep.
quality. That I can't say enough about it, honestly. Uh, what I want to know is does this thing have legs? Is it meant to go on?
We're hoping for a season 2. We have some ideas for a season 2, and we're just waiting for the green light. It is a weird time in TV right now. I think if
Yeah,
the
yeah,
show had
yeah.
come out a year ago, the green light probably
Oh,
would have been a shoe in.
ah,
But now there's a writer's strike,
yes.
and there's also some contraction with the streamers.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens. But we're
Yes.
hopeful right now.
Okay. But luckily, Mean Gene doesn't depend on the Hollywood dollar. That's just that's the cream floating on
Yeah,
top,
it's
right?
icing for me.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah, comics is the cake. Comics for sure is the cake.
Okay, so what's the
Hollywood is
next
the icing.
slice of cake, Gene? What's the
So
next?
I have 2 different projects right now, both with First Second. One is I am doing a series for middle grade kids. It's called The Books of Clash, and it's based on this really popular mobile game franchise. There's a really popular mobile game called Clash of Clans and a companion game called Clash Royale. They're set in this really fun, poppy kind of medieval inspired fantasy world. So we have 8 books in that series that we've signed to do. Every book is going to focus on a different character from the game. I don't know if you played those games before.
I've never even heard of it, Gene.
Okay,
but
okay. Well, if you have like 7th graders in your life,
they've heard
they
of it. I know.
probably have
Yeah,
played it.
yeah. Is it like Clash of Clans, Clash of Kings? Like there's a variety of them.
It's there's 2 games set in that world. It's Clash of Clans and Clash Royale. Clash Royale. Clash of Clans is sort of like a StarCraft game where you have different villages fighting each other, and Clash Royale is more like a one-on-one kind of.
That's their Fortnite. That's their Fortnite-ish.
Yeah, a little bit. But the view that you take is actually kind of a god's eye view, and you're like sending these characters out to fight for you. It's really fun. I mean, it's all based on war, but the war is done in this really like chaotic Looney Tunes kind of way.
Oh, okay.
So it's very appealing. Yeah, it's not like real violence or anything. It's all very cartoony and fun.
And you're what? You're writing.
I'm writing. The books are being drawn by Les McLean and Allison Acton. So Les McLean does a webcomic called Johnny Crossbones. He did a graphic novel called Old Souls with a writer named Brian McDonald that I really love. Old Souls is a great graphic novel. And then he did a book with a friend of mine named Derek Kim. They did a book together called Toon. So Les McLean is like incredible. Both of them, both Les McLean and Allison Acton are incredible.
Stop right there. You just said a name, Derek Kirk Kim.
Yeah.
Where's that guy? Where's comics?
He's working on a comic right now. You can actually follow his progress. It's called The Last Mermaid, and you can follow his progress on his Instagram. I think his Instagram is his name, Derek Kirk Kim, all one word.
Don't get me wrong. I'm a Gene Yang fan from way back, but like I'm a Derek Kirk King like super fan. Like
yeah, me too. He's incredible.
That guy. I can't say enough about his. Not just his cartooning style but his writing and cartoonist par excellence.
That's right. He's incredible. Like Same Difference is one of the greatest graphic novels ever produced.
Like I've been wanting stuff since then.
He went into animation for a little bit. He worked on Adventure Time and a few other shows, and now he's back in comics.
That makes sense.
So he's working on this amazing like dystopian future kind of graphic novel. It's beautiful. You can follow him. You can follow him on social media on Instagram.
He's like a Dave Cooper level.
Yeah. That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
He's just He's like just the quality of his illustrations is
the
beyond
texture of
belief.
the entire
Yep.
page,
Mhm.
I don't know. It's hard for me to even describe what a Derek Kirk Kim comic, what
Yeah.
makes it so awesome. You just got to read it, folks.
Yeah, you got to read it. You got to read it. That's
So
right.
okay, how many doors have you been able to open for your buddies? How many how many people did you introduce Jason Shiga to, or Derek, or any
Oh,
of
I
the?
mean, yeah, we'll see. Like I didn't, introduce some of my comic book friends to some of the folks that I met in Hollywood for
Yeah,
sure. But we'll see if anything comes out of that. Jason Shiga too also has a brand new series, Choose Your Own Adventure series called Leviathan.
I've got it right
That's
here. Eisner
yeah,
nominated. I think it won an
that's right.
Eisner too, didn't it? This. I don't
Yeah,
know.
might have. I haven't been following
Oh
closely. Did
no,
it
they
win?
haven't been announced yet. They haven't been announced. It's
So
nominated.
it's nominated. Nominated. Yeah. But
It's
he's
the only book on the Eisner nominations that I even heard of, let alone read. This year,
oh, really?
unfortunately. That's more
Okay.
of a statement on me than anything else, but like I'm
Yeah.
also a Shiga fanatic.
Yeah, Shiga's
Like
amazing. He's so good.
Shiga, Kim,
Yeah. They're incredible. Incredible. For sure. So
what?
he's in France right now. Jason Shiga and his family are in
Yeah,
France right
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah. He decided to stay, huh? Is he
Yeah,
for good?
I don't think he's there for good. I think he'll be back I want to say end of the year. I'm not
Oh,
100%
okay,
sure
good.
though.
I
Yeah.
interviewed him here once too. Of rare.
Okay.
That was so hard to get that
Yeah, I'm sure.
happen.
I'm sure.
That guy, and then even as much as I just said about Derek, like Jason Shiga, I'm going to shine up some more of your friends because Shiga is a next level genius card.
He
How does it?
is.
How can you know that rich pool of talent that was there in the
I
Bay
was just
Area?
very lucky. Yeah, I mean, there were like Jesse Ham, who's no longer with us,
Yeah.
is
Rest in peace,
also
Jesse.
incredible. Yeah, he's I don't know, like he had a deeper understanding of comics as a medium than anybody I knew. I think out of all the
Yes.
people in my life, he probably had the deepest understanding of comics. He's just was such an incredible, not just cartoonist, but also teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still kind of we still definitely feel his loss when we hang out.
Speaking
Sure.
of law, he drew a picture of Rory Root for
Mhm.
me after Rory passed. I have a picture by Jesse Ham of Rory Root, and it's like
Mm.
talk about a poignant picture to like look at and think about a moment in
Yeah,
time in Bay Area comics.
yeah.
Talk about just for a second. I don't know because it's my show. Talk comic relief and Rory Root. Did you how?
Yeah, Rory was possibly the first person to sell my comics. Um, I had these handmade
And I
comics.
believe you might still be waiting for your check for those consignment copies.
Oh, no, that's not true because I would go in for my consignment check and he'd be like, "I can give you the money or you can
Or
get more by just taking stuff off my shelves." And I always took that second option.
that was one of the first things he told me was that he did that. He
Yeah,
would do
yeah,
that to every,
yeah.
and he goes, and every single one of them is gonna just
Yeah,
buy
we
stuff.
always take stuff. Yeah, and the thing is, I think most of us, we would take the more esoteric stuff that would probably move a little bit slower, right?
Totally,
That was the stuff
absolutely
that we were interested
stuff
in.
he's never gonna sell.
Yeah.
He's sitting on printers cases of 00 and stuff, and like nobody.
Yeah. And we would love that stuff. We would love that
Yes,
stuff. Yeah, totally.
God,
So
God,
he
man.
was smart. He was a very smart dude. No, it was him, and then there was a store that was right around the corner from him called Eastwind Books. And I think those were the two stores that I started selling my handmade mini comics in. Rory used to run like these cartoonist nights that we would all get together. Sometimes it was in the Indian restaurant right next to
Yeah,
his
right.
shop. Sometimes it was in the shop itself. And the sense of community there, that was I never went to art school. That was kind of my art school, was hanging out in that community that was largely centered around Comic Relief in Berkeley.
Which was like, I don't know. It's arguably the greatest comic book store. It's the greatest I ever went into for sure.
Yeah.
As far as like hitting me right in from all of the vectors like that I
Yeah, it was a legendary store for sure. And this is pre-internet. So there are things in that store that you just could not find anywhere else.
Yeah, my gosh.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Roy Root too.
Yeah.
And I tried to drag him kicking and screaming onto the internet. I like to think he would have been. He got on there, his website. He got a nice Dan Klaus designed website right before he passed away and stuff. Like they were starting to make steps there. And
yeah, I think he would have made the leap too.
it's tough though now. The game now is tough. Gene, if you're going to give advice, and I'll bet you do, I'll bet people come to you for advice. Because Gene, I want to be a cartoonist like you. What do you tell them?
So all of my advice is from my own path, right? That's the path I know the best. I began as a self-publisher. I think that's a great way to go. It's not the only way to go, but I think it's a great way to go because when you self-publish, you handle everything yourself, from the writing and drawing all the way through the bookmaking. So you'll like have to negotiate printers, and you'll have to talk to distributors and all of that. And you're not going to make any money at it, but you're going to learn a lot by doing it. The other thing is, when I talk to my friends who are cartoonists and authors, the same story comes up over and over again. And that's, for most of us, it takes us about 10 years from the moment that we start taking our craft seriously to the moment that we make any kind of money on it. And it's not even like living money, right? It's just any time, like where we stop losing money at the craft that we're choosing to pursue. So during that 10 years, you have to figure out how you're going to feed yourself. For me, I had a day job. I had a day job that I really liked. I was a high school teacher, you know, and for me, that was actually a very good pairing because teaching high school was like lots of extrovert energy, and making comics was lots of introvert energy. So I felt like my life was kind of
good balance
during that time. Yeah. I mean, I think day jobs are great as long as it's not like you're not in an abusive situation, and as long as you have coworkers that you like. I think a day job is great. It's even like a source of stories, you know.
In your case, right? Especially.
Totally.
I mean, there would be no Dragon Hoops.
Yeah, that's right. Dragon Hoops came straight out of my day job. And it's not just that. It's also like being around, like something like teaching. You're around other people's voices all the time. So I do think like dialogue came easier to me when I was teaching than
that makes
now.
Sense.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think that now there's a critical difference between even just 10 years ago. It's never been easier to print and produce super high quality graphic novels.
Right. Yeah.
Like in a print on demand capacity, if you want to. Yeah. That alone is a game changer, in my opinion, because it was these the minimums of a print run required just kept a lot of things from ever seeing the light of day in publishing.
Yeah.
Like if you don't think you can sell 500 copies, then you probably are never going to do a real print run.
Yeah, that's right. I think back in the day, the challenge was saving enough money to meet that minimum, right? You to put out an issue of a comic, you had to save like a couple $1,000s at least, maybe even like $3,000. And nowadays you can do like a very tiny print run for like $100, $200. But I think the challenge now is how do you get people to notice your book?
Right.
Yeah. As opposed to how do you get it printed?
I mean, the other thing that's changed too is like you could seriously start cartooning today and never pursue a publisher. Like
that's
never,
right.
Like publish what? Why does there need to be this middleman? What are they giving me? That's some publishers are going to provide more than others, obviously, but there's a case to be made that you can go kick crowdfunding. And then Patreon, I think, is a super compelling thing to get cartoonists working more regularly and putting out content. Like the idea of like a subscription and like they're putting things out. Ed Piskor is going to do a daily comic strip.
Oh, cool. I didn't hear about that. That's great.
That's awesome. On Instagram, I think. But like, but there's so many different ways, new ways to monetize and to take a fan base that maybe you've only got that hardcore 100 people, but where that used to be spread out across the country, you had no way to tap into that. Now it's all realistic.
Yep. That's right.
Have you done any of that stuff? Are you?
I have not. My son actually crowdfunded a project when he was in high school. So he did a card game / it's like a cross between a card game and a comic, like a choose your own adventure comic. His favorite cartoonist is Jason Shiga. So we used to, like when he was in high school during the summers, we would go and hang out at Jason's house and we would all draw together. So he was super inspired by Jason Shiga. And this card game is very Shiga-ish. So he ended up kickstarting it. And made, I don't know, I think he made like 10 grand, something like that, which is
Nice.
a ton of money for a 14-year-old or 15-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was
But,
able to produce and ship a
it was
game.
produced. Yeah, he figured all that out. He basically self-published it. So he figured out how to format his files. He figured out what printer to use. He got samples. All the stuff that I did when I was in my 20s with comics, he did with his card game.
Oh, amazing. Like, I'd say what you will about the modern world and the internet being whatever it is for society, but it's like, dude, it's a golden age for creative people.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it really is. It's never been easier to get your creative work out into the world. But the challenge now is, how do you get folks to notice? In the flood of creativity, how do you get folks to notice your
Gene, it's almost like you're teeing me up here, because there's one way. You know what? If you want to see your comics promoted on the internet, yeah, that's right. This show you're watching, we're on the internet, Gene. So people see this thing and they send their comics. Believe it or not, I've had dozens and dozens of people send me their work to the $1 Million Mailbox.
Awesome.
P.O. Box 1163 Arcata, California 95518. Send your stuff in. I spread it out. I look at it with my pal Larry Young from AIT Planet Lair, who I'll bet you know.
Yep.
And he might even be watching this show right now.
Yeah.
He's the greatest. We do this show and we review comics that people send me, and it's kind of like one of the big joys of my life now. It's my last sort of, like, I don't get to the comic store every week. It's ironic because now we're in this golden age of graphic novels, but there's just such a flood. I don't even know where to choose from. So I just figured I'll let people mail them to me, and then I'll read whatever they send me.
Yeah. Sounds awesome. Yeah. That's a great gig you've set up. Having comics come to you. That's great.
It works. And I've had all kinds of great guests like you, Gene. I want to thank you for your time, but I want you to tell folks where they can learn more about Gene Yang.
Well, I have a website. It's my name, GeneLuanYang.com. And I also am at that same handle on Twitter and on Instagram and on Blue Sky. I got on Blue Sky very recently.
I've heard about that, but I haven't done anything with that.
Yeah, a bunch of comic book people are on there. I think it's basically like Twitter, but from maybe, 10, 15 years ago.
Okay. Well, I got to get out of here. I know you got to go. You're a busy guy, Gene. You got Hollywood series sequels seasons to pitch.
I have a comic deadline that I have to hit. That's the next thing. Yeah.
Well, we want to thank Gene. I want to thank the Heidelberger Druck, our sponsor for this episode, the amazing Heidelberger Druck printer. We'll be back. I don't know when. I'll be back next week for Serious Star Trek. We're going to talk about. Are you a Star Trek fan, Gene?
I am a mild Star Trek fan. I had a friend who was a hardcore Next Generation fan in high school. Okay. So my fandom is basically through him. He used to invite us to his house all the time to watch episodes.
Strange New Worlds? You into Strange New Worlds?
I am not into Strange New Worlds. Should I be into Strange New Worlds?
Okay. I just watched the season premiere of season 2. And I'll just say 2 words, Gene. And if these 2 words don't pique your curiosity to watch it, I don't know what will.
Okay.
These words are karate drugs. Okay.
Wow. All right.
We got karate drugs in Star Trek now. So it's a whole new world.
Okay. That sounds awesome.
All right. I want to thank you, Gene. I'm going to play the closing credits here, and then we're going to get out of here. There's going to be a little cameo at the end of the closing credits. Gene, if you got time to stick around, we can chat afterwards, but if you're busy, I know you're a busy guy. I'll see you around. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dan. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks all of you folks out there for watching. Come back on Tuesday. We'll be here for Serious Star Trek. We'll talk about Strange New Worlds and karate drugs, and we will do that on Tuesday. And then I'll be back in a couple weeks for more comic book stuff.
So I say, it's not Frankenstein, you moron. It's Frankenstein's monster.
Oh, by Cromlin, you sure showed him.